changes.
Well, actually, we'll get her.
The last, I want to ask the operator, Tony. My name is Betty, Elizabeth. They call it. I made a tape, like also for the other artifacts from the Jewish Year, and the last.
Okay.
This is January the 11th, 1995. The survivor's name is Elizabeth Feldman DeJong. I'm the interviewer, Edie Kalb. We're in North York, Ontario, Canada, and the language is English. Could you tell me your name again, please?
Elizabeth Feldman DeJong.
And where were you born?
I'm born in Holland, Amsterdam.
And I would like to know a little bit about your background. Can you tell me how many children were in your family?
There were 4 children in my mother and my father had 4 kids. And the oldest one was Sophia, and the second was Frederica, and I was the third is Elizabeth, and then I had a brother, Joseph.
Can you tell me a little bit about your background as you were growing up?
Well, I was born in 1916, December. And my both parents were deaf. They were born deaf. And we spoke always on our hands.
Sign language?
Mostly on our hands, the sign language. So with my parents, they had a little bit of voice, but mostly they were deaf. They both went to school in Groningen. My mother was in Groningen 18 years. It was like an institution. They slept there.
What was the name of that institution?
Groningen was the deaf institution. It was in Groningen. I know the name was Guyot.
And where was it located?
In Groningen. It was like a province from the Netherlands. And it was a big deaf institution. I talk about a long time ago. And the kids went only to, my mother was there 18 years, and my father. And so actually my mother was 6 or 7 years old. My mother is from a deaf family altogether. Her parents were deaf. Her 2 brothers were deaf. The whole family. And my father, it was not. My father had like a meningitis. Brain, the membrane of the brain was. So when he was was only 3 or 4 years old, and when he was from a normal family, like speaking. So when my father was 3 or 4 years old, he was very sick, and then after the big fever, his hearing was gone. So my grandmother, and if your hearing is gone after a while, your speech goes too, and you can't correct yourself. So they sent him also to Groningen. My father was 10 years older than my mother, and they were both there. And all the kids in Groningen, in the deaf institution, they had to care for the younger kids who came in. So my mother's two brothers were also in Groningen. When they say the whole family was deaf, so they had to go there, and they. So my father helped my mother's brothers. So when my mother was 14 or 15 years old, my father was already 25. And he fell in love with my mother. So he waited 7 years till she came out of school, and then he married her. So my father learned in the school. He always learned also a trade. My father learned to make furniture, very fine furniture, like polishing and some things. But when he came back to Amsterdam, he went to the diamond trade. My father was a diamond cutter.
Where is this? Where your family lived in Amsterdam?
Yeah. I was born in Amsterdam. All of us, my sister, my brother, everybody was born in Amsterdam. So after my mother finished school in Groningen, she came to Amsterdam, married my father, and then and they got 4 children.
So you grew up in Amsterdam. You spent your childhood days in Amsterdam.
Yeah, and it was good childhood.
Can you tell me a little bit about your childhood?
Yeah.
Did you have an observant Jewish life there?
No.
What type of Jewish? How did you know you were a Jew? How did you distinguish yourselves as Jews there?
My parents were deaf, I told you, and for them to go in a synagogue, so they wouldn't understand it anyway. They knew all the Jewish laws. My mother, I never asked her where she got it from. Maybe from her mother. She told us all the stories. My mother was a great storyteller, and my grandmother was living in our place too. My mother's mother was living also in Amsterdam.
With you in your home?
In our home. And they had they always was telling us about Joseph and Moses in a little. And they had an enormous, they couldn't speak very well, but they had an enormous theatrical way to telling things. So as a child, I was already very, very, knew all the stories. Actually more the stories than actually the religion. So we know we were Jewish, but we never went in a shul. They were also a little bit socialist. My parents were socialists. That time,
in what way?
When I was young, don't forget I was born in 1916, and that the socialists came in work that the people should work 8 hours a day, and the social kids should not supposed to go to work. Kids should go to school till they were 14 that time. And it was only 48 hours a week you were supposed to work, not 80 hours a week. I talked for a long time ago. So my parents were strong believers in a new world. In the new world.
Were they active in the social because of their hearing?
No, they were not active, but they told us about it. My mother was very well educated. Well, I've told you, was so many years in Groningen, she could read and write very well. Mm. And you love to read.
What type of newspapers in circulation?
Yeah, newspapers and books, and at that time they started libraries to come. They are very heavy on kids to be educated, and my mother was a very strong believer in that we should go to school and learn well, and and she did a beautiful job, even when she was deaf.
Can you give us an idea of what a day would be like growing up in your home? What type of activities you would do?
I have to say, my father was a diamond cutter, but at that time, when I grew up, it was a lot of people were without work. Like now, it was a very, very bad situation. No much work, and my mother was sewing. My mother making money to.
So she took in work as a seamstress?
Yeah, she was a good seamstress, very well. You could make fur, you could everything. My father was a diamond cutter, but many times there was no work. When if there is the first thing that people don't buy is diamonds in that time. So there was a lot of times no work. So and there was no social assistance that time. How much was it? Maybe 1 guilder or 2 guilder was nothing. So my mother had to work to keep us going. And I can't remember when I come down, she was working in the night to make money for. My father was helping her, and she a very warm family. So my mother couldn't hear, was not very well disturbed by other people. Her whole life as a family. Around her brothers, and she was a member from a deaf society. They visit each other. It was like a place there. They play billiards and they read and just made little play things like stage play. It's all pantomimes, but they were very. My mother did a lot of those things.
How did you learn to sign?
Now, the signing I did automatically. When I saw my father and my mother signing all the time. But speaking, I had 2 older sisters. But I have one sister was 6 years older than I was, and the second was 5 years older than I was. So I was already quite... my sisters were always talking, so I knew talking, and also sign language, I did it automatically. When I was in the high chair, I used to tell my mother the bell rings, or other things we had, all things that we automatically did. And my mother was very warm, very intimate, very close to us.
What did you do as a family? Did you to entertain yourselves as a family?
I told you my mother was always in a deaf society, And they were very, all the deaf people came together. And they did things together. They made plays, they made play cards, they talked and they made coffee. There was a little coffee shop there, and I really always came there. I was really very much involved in the deaf society, but though we could hear, but we still. For me, it didn't make any difference. I have like a little thing. I was very talkative when I was young, very talkative. Talk the blue streak. So my mother went to me in the streetcar, as I used to say to me. Then, if you talk always on your hands, everybody stares at you, what you're doing. And then my mother used to say to me before I came, he said, listen, they called me Beppie, I'm Elizabeth. He said, I don't want you to talk to me when we go in the streetcar. We go out of the streetcar, you talk to me again. In the streetcar, you're quiet. Well, I only talk with my mother in my hands, and big signs and things like this. And everybody was staring. So my mother said, don't talk. If it's as soon as a minute in the streetcar, I forgot all about it. I didn't know the reason why I couldn't talk to my mother. And then my mother said, shh, don't talk. But I did not listen. For me, it was so normal.
It was a natural way of life.
Natural way, and I did still talk to her. And then we came out of the street, and everybody would say to my mother, who is deaf? You were the child. And my mother would say, no, it's me. And I said, oh, better that way, My mother said to me, not talk to me, But I was so, tell her stories and things like that. We were very close, and I had actually a very nice youth.
Very nice youth.
Yeah.
Aunts and uncles, large family?
Yeah, no, my mother had only 2 brothers. And I had also nephews, 3 nephews who were deaf. Born deaf. My mother had 4 kids who could hear, but my father was not deaf born. So my father had a big family. My father had about 5 sisters, I think, and 2 brothers. But my father was the youngest of the family. So I can remember my aunts and my uncles that I had to go Friday night visit them. And they were quite well-to-do people. My father.
They lived in Amsterdam?
They lived in Amsterdam and Antwerp, but mostly in Amsterdam. My father had 2 sisters, and they were the people they had a big doll factory. My father had a porcelain, and they did van DeJong. They had a big factory. They were quite well-to-do. So Fridays we had something, or we had to visit them. I remember things that I had to get a big serviette before my when I was small. And have to behave myself, Things like this I remember from my father's, but they could hear. They were not deaf. And they were, very...
Can you tell me a little bit about going to school, growing up?
Yeah, when I was about 6 years old, every kids go to school, and I went to public school, 6 years, till I was... That was only 6 years. And the 7th and the 8th and the 9th, it was actually in higher school.
High school. What type of Jewish community was there at the time in Amsterdam? How large was it, do you know?
There must be a Jewish community, but I have to tell you the truth, I never associated with it. I have to tell another thing. The first time, it's maybe not nice to say, I was in a synagogue. It was in Canada.
So you never had much. But what about it socially? Maybe not religiously, but did your parents socialize with Jewish people? Or
Yeah,
did
sure.
They socialize outside the Jewish circle?
Yeah, because in Holland we were quite assimilated. In Holland, the Dutch Jewish people in Holland lived there for a long time. Like for my husband, he's a Portuguese. They came in 1400, 1500 with the Spanish Inquisition. He came in Holland. They were there for 300-400 years. So my grandmother and my great-grandmother, what I can remember, they were all Dutch. They did not, I maybe far away, they came maybe from Russia. I know that my mother's family, they came later. I know actually my husband's, but my mother came here, my grandmother was born here.
Here in
Groningen, in Holland. And I think her mother was even from the Van Dam. was born in Holland. They go back a long time, and they were quite assimilated, though they knew they were Jewish. But and there was also a Jewish district in Holland, but we never lived there.
You did not live in the Jewish district?
No, we did not specially want to live in I don't think they did it on purpose, it just happened that way. So I had girlfriends, and they were Gentile and Jewish, and it was not a big deal.
That was my next question. So you had friends of both Gentile and Jewish
Oh,
friends.
definitely.
Did you ever experience any type of anti-Semitism?
Not that I was a child.
None.
Not that I can remember.
When did you start to first hear about what was happening in Europe with Hitler's rise to power?
Well, this was already 1939. I got married in 1936. And my husband, I saw you later pictures of my first husband, Max, his father, he was an artist. He had paintings. He was an artist, a sculptor, and I got married with him in 1936. And so then I moved from Amsterdam to Heemstede. It was a little place out of Amsterdam, quite about Haarlem, Heemstede, very close to the coastline. And we had a nice house there, 10 rooms. And we painted, and I went to work. I was a designer then already. I had my diploma for designing, and I went to work. And we did not know children at all. We did actually. My husband was always against kids. He didn't want children. So that was till the war came. We heard already about the war when we were growing up. You know, like when Hitler came in power. I was not a child. I was 27 years when I went to Auschwitz. So it was a long time.
So around the time that Hitler came to power,
we know that it was.
How did you know?
We knew about talking about it, and and people. Then Germans fled Germany, went to Holland. That was in 1937, I think 1938, before the war. Mm. So we knew about it that the Jews were, and the Kristallnacht, that they went. We know about the papers, and we heard about that. So we were all very shocked, and my brother, actually my sister and her husband, they had Jewish people in their house. They took them up, then we visited us, and we know that there were razzias already in Holland. And
did you hear anything about concentration camps or anything
no,
like that?
No, we knew that there was concentration. Listen, if there was razzias, the people were sent out. We heard about they went to camps, and it was very bad. And they talked about killings. But who would believe it?
You didn't believe it. So was there any thought ever of trying to run away or?
Yeah, we did try when the war started in 1940. When Germany came in. You heard about it. First they came to Poland, then they were already in. Then they came to Holland. So they were already on the march then, and we know how much razzias were there for Jewish people. They picked them up and they sent them away. It was already very bad. So when I lived in Heemstede still, and we know that the war started in 1940, and when I stayed in Heemstede in my garden, I heard and saw the people flying over to Rotterdam, and that they captured Holland. The Germans came in Holland, and they made Rotterdam nearly flat. They bombarded. And Holland is very small. It's not a big country. It's populated, but it's not small. So the Germans came in, and we were very sad, for sure.
What happened when they came in? What did you see? What was?
Now we know that was bombarded, and the Dutch government, like the Queen and her cabinet and everybody, her people, they fled to England. So Holland was basically without a head of state, nothing. So when Germans came in Holland, they took over.
What happened?
And then they started, like the laws who were already in Germany. They came to in Holland that you had to wear a star, that you have to give your radio in, that you can go shopping after 5 o'clock. That was also a very, very traumatic experience. First, I told you I was living in Holland, like like wild. Wild. We were just like everybody else. We were not singled out that we were Jewish. And I was in a swim. I told you I was in a sport organization. I was in a youth organization. I did a lot of, we were all active in other things, sports and things like this, and sailing.
Name the youth organization that you belong to.
The first one was the IAC. That is the arbeiders, like the workers' youth center, and there was for working people, like they came together, and we went on walking things, and we did all kinds of things, and music. We played mandolin and guitar and folks.
It was a social group.
And all were the same, and there was all Jewish and gentle. It was not specific Jewish.
Did you continue with that group after you got married?
I was I did not in the youth organization when I went to Heemstede, but we did go swimming, the arbeidersport. It's also like there was a youth sport group. That was not the other group. So we were swimming and all kinds of sports we did.
Back to what happened when things began to happen. What happened to what was your husband doing prior to that to make a living?
Mostly he painted. Mostly he made a book, like layouts, books, things,
and was his living affected?
Painting. No, he painted in the war too, but he was sensitive about what happened. He was he knew that all. He was very, very afraid that time that they told that the people would get picked up and razzias and things like that. He made a lot of friends in Heemstede. Heemstede was a small place. It was maybe 2 or 3 Jewish families. And the most mine friends were Gentile. So they visit each other, and they used to say, if you were, and they liked us, and we liked them. They were friends of ours. They used to say, if there happened something to you, then we're going to help you. We try to, I know that there are some people that I could count on if there really was. There were already people in hiding in 1941, 1940. There was big razzias in Holland already. They took them up, and there were a lot of things. So we get a letter from the German government, the SS actually, that we had to go out of the coastline. And we only could take with us 1 suitcase each.
When was that?
That was in 1909. First came all the laws that we couldn't go. It was also a very traumatic experience. Can you remember? I swam every day, and suddenly big signs outside: Jews can't go in.
Did you have to wear the star?
Oh yeah, right away the star, and we couldn't do shopping before 5 o'clock. We couldn't do the radio. We couldn't go bicycle. We couldn't go anything. So suddenly I felt isolated. Between all those people, I think, gee, I'm different. I'm not Beppie anymore. I'm just an outcast. I felt very bad, yeah. And it was a funny feeling. When you grow up, I was already 25 or 26, and everything is free, and suddenly you come in an environment that you outcast. You're absolute outcast. And I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that, and I felt very bad. But the people around me were nice. They came in and they gave me food and they tried to do things, So then we suddenly get a letter from the SS, and told us you had to go out of the house in 24 hours. I told you I had a big house. It is not my house, but it was a big house where we lived in, big garden. And so suddenly we had to take out of the house only a suitcase. I know about it before we were not the first one. They said if you go out of your house, you can only take a suitcase with you, and you have to leave everything behind. And then and the Germans came the next day, the SS, and took everything out of your house and brought it to Germany.
Emptied out your house?
Emptied out in the next day already. They came with the big tractors and took everything out. So I had neighbors where I was very good with, and I had a piano. I had a piano in my house, and I played a little bit, and I said to her, if you come in, if we go, we have to go away, maybe tonight you take the piano. It was a good one, a Steinway. I said, and you take them out, and then you
You thought you were going to come back, so you would...
No, I didn't. We didn't know. We
come.
didn't think about anything. My parents lived already in the ghetto. They lived in Amsterdam. They moved them out of the place and gave them another place to live in the ghetto. They call it the ghetto. It was like a couple streets. They call it the ghetto, actually. They had to move where they lived to another place. And then the day that we went with 2 suitcases to the train, maybe half of the town of Heemstede, they came with us. And they were crying and felt bad for us. You know, they were good people. And he said, don't come to us, and we're going to visit you. We try to keep in touch with you. And so we were only 2 days by my mother in Amsterdam. And that the Dutch police, they were still good. They was not overtaken by the SS'ers. And we had also in 5th colony in Holland a lot of people, sympathizers, Nazi sympathizers, who are police and things. So they came in the night to my mother's place and they told us that you have to look for a hiding place. The SS came to us and said, they want you to come to the headquarters from the SS, but you took something out of your house. I didn't know what my friends took out of my house. I was by my mother, you know. And the police said to me, you better, if you have a hiding place and you have some friends, they really meant you took things out of your house, and I'm sure they pick you up. And those Dutch police took us in the night out of my mother's place, and I said, you go there, and they're friends of ours. So soon we came in the house, they said right away, so, oh yeah, you can stay with us.
Just to backtrack a little, you said something about some false identification papers you were
telling me. When we were still in Heemstede, when we were still in Heemstede, we had people who said, why do you take some false papers, and maybe you don't have to... we had a big star a Jewish star on our passport, and they made us false papers without a false name and also no star in it. But I was still afraid to go. But everybody knew me in Heemstede. I was still afraid.
Never used those papers?
In Amsterdam. I never used them.
And then you went into hiding?
And then I went into hiding.
How long were you in hiding?
Over a year and a half.
And who hid you?
First we went to the grocery, the guy from the grocery store who always had a horse and a wagon who came always talking to us. And we were here, but he had 5 kids, and he had another friend. And he said, I have another friend who has no children, and they want to take you in. He said, I'll bring you there. The kids know you. The kids know me.
And where did they hide you?
It was in Haarlem.
And where, in their home?
Oh, yeah, it was in their home.
In an attic?
Yeah, we were in an attic, and there was a room on the top floor. And those people were fantastic. Yeah, enormous good people.
Did they take money for doing this?
No. The people where we were, I think my brother-in-law who was married with my older sister didn't want to go in hiding before she could hide before me. They did not want to go in hiding before all her family was safe. She was very, very conscious about it. My mother and my father should be in hiding and everything.
So who was
paid
with
something.
You in this
Sophia.
home?
She paid. I think they paid some, but very little. But my parents, who were still in Amsterdam, the SS came all the time to my parents and told them, listen, what happened to your daughter and your son-in-law? So my mother, who couldn't hear, and said all the time, I don't know where they are, I don't know. So they were very afraid that they would pick them up.
So what happened? They went into hiding with you?
They were in hiding with me.
So who was in hiding altogether with you?
There was in hiding place were my father, my mother, my husband, and me, 4. We lived 4 of us in a small attic for a year and a half. We didn't go out of couldn't go on the street. Nobody was supposed to know that the people were. But it was very dangerous to hide people.
Did the people continued with their everyday existence while you were in that house?
Yeah, he was working and she was cooking for us and doing things for us. You had to be very careful. There was only one washroom downstairs. My father couldn't hear my mother, so that nobody came in. They had to stay in the washroom until we told them they can go out.
And did you have any news of what was going on, how things were progressing?
Yeah, we had at that time already. There was people who the underground started to work already. Don't forget it was 1942, and there was a lot of things in Holland, razzias and picking up, and that on and the people that sent, and not only the Jewish people, there was Gentile people who were taken from their home to work camps in Germany, and Holland actually was the first country where they they stopped working, the streetcar, the water, they had a big strike, but they didn't like that they took not only the Jews, but they did the Germans. There was a big resistance in Holland.